Welcome to So Very Easy. My name is Laura, and it's that time for the block of the month called Shades of Grey from Quilting Confections. I'll put a link in the description for you so that you can get the free pattern. What's really great about this particular block is there are no diagonal seams, so no half square triangles. It is all straight piecing, squares and rectangles. This is a very easy block to do, but it has a lot of potential. Let me show you how quick and easy it is to put this together. You will need a dark print at 2.5 inches by 21 inches, a light print of the same measurement, 2.5 inches by 21 inches. You're going to need 4 pieces of the blue, 2.5 inches by 4.5 inches, and a little center square at 2.5 inches. Let's start with the construction of the corner blocks, which will take these 2 strips. Take the dark and the light, place them right sides together and sew 1/4 inch all the way down, and press towards the dark fabric. The next stage is going to be subcutting this into 2.5 inch strips. So you're going to take your ruler, put it at the 2.5 inch mark, and cut, and do this all the way along, and you will have 2.5 inch strips. You have 8 sections. 2 will be sewn together. Flip it over and sew 1/4 inch. They're sewn together, now pressing. Take the 2 seams, push your hand in one direction and your hand in the other direction, and it will open up that corner. Now don't trim those threads, just leave them alone and press that seam flat. And by pressing it flat, you have a little 4 patch in the corner. So the outside is a 4 patch and the inside back is a 4 patch. And by doing this, it stays nice and flat. We have 4 patches, 4 blue strips, 1 center seam. This is all the components needed for the one block. You're going to start with the center, and you're going to make a cross with the blue. The 4 patches are going to go in the corners, with the dark going out. So you have 4 dark corners and 4 center pieces. Now to sew them together, you're going to sew them in rows. Sew those 2 pieces and add on this. Do the same for the top piece. And sew the black onto the blues. Now let's talk pressing. You need to have the seams opposing each other. Take the seams that have the 4 patch and press them going to the inside. The black is going to go out, the 4 patch again going in. Now when we sew this row and this row together, those seams are going to nestle together and you'll get a nice sharp point. Now, what direction to press these in? Well, because this seam is going in, this seam needs to go out. The reason is if you're going to make more than one block, they're going to be able to nestle together and have that area where they all match up. Now that was quick and easy. We're done. This was so easy. Let's make a quilt out of the same block. We're going to put this one aside for the block of the month. And let's grab a stack of fat quarters of blacks and grays. And the blacks and grays are going to go into the darker elements. I've chosen this fabric from Timeless Treasures, and this is just 1 bundle of fat quarters. Then the white is going to go where the light whites are. Instead of the blue, let's really put some sparkle into it and add a nice bright lime green. Now you can use any color you want, but I'm going to kick it up with this lime green. I have this great thread from Marathon, and it is polyester, but it looks like cotton. And I'm going to quilt the entire thing with this green, and it's going to really pop. It's quick, it's easy. Let's get started. So from all those fat quarters, I'm going to get 20 blocks that look like this. From the dark black fat quarter, I've been able to cut 20 2.5 inch squares. They will be the centerpiece. I have used 3 lime green fat quarters, and I was able to cut 80 2.5 inches by 4.5 inches. I've used 3/4 of a yard. I've cut 10 strips at 2.5 inches, the whole width of the fabric, cut them in half, and that's given me 20 strips. From 4 fat quarters, blacks and grays, I was able to get 20 strips. Again, 2.5 inches, all the way the length, which was 21.5 inches. The next thing is sew the grays and blacks onto the white, and that is going to make this piece here just as we did before. The strips are all sewn together and all of the seams are pressed to the dark side. Now we need to subcut all of these just as we did this at 2.5 inches. So all of my subcuts have been done, and I like to place them together as I'm going to sew them and put them on a board or a tray, and that way I can just pick this up and bring it right to the sewing machine. The other thing this time I did is, instead of putting 2 blacks together, because I did use gray, I'm going to do a black and a gray in each corner. So I have a black and a gray. Now I can take this to the machine and sew 1/4 inch on all these pieces. So the 4 patches are sewn together. The blacks are on the outside, the grays inside. And I do have the solid black, or the fabric that reads as a solid black. Now I need to put in my crossbars. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take half of these blocks and I'm going to put the black in the center. Now I will have 10 blocks with the blacks in the center and 10 blocks with gray in the center, and sew them just like you did before. 1 row, the 2nd row, the 3rd row, put the rows together and press, just as you did the single block. So the blocks are the same. I have 10 blocks with the 4 grays in the middle, 10 blocks with the black in the middle, and the gray on the outside. Now we can sew these together to make a quilt. The quilt will consist of 4 squares per row, and there's 5 rows, and they're going to alternate. So if you're going to start with the gray in the center, you'll put it in one corner. The one with the black in the center will go next. Then the gray, then the black. For the 2nd row, you're going to start with the black and then gray, and it's going to continue all the way this way. Gray centers, the black centers, the black centers, the gray centers. And you're going to be able to do this, sew them all together. All those seams are going to nestle together really nice. So the quilt top is done, and it's all made from one very simple block. Now you can end the quilt here, or you can add a border. I'm going to add 2 borders on. The first one is going to be just a tiny little piece of black, and I've used a solid black, and it is going to be cut at 1 inch. When it's sewn, it's going to equal 1/2 inch. So it's only going to be a tiny little border. The white border I'm going to do at 2.5 inches because it's the same size as the rest of the blocks. So let's get the border on and let's get it quilted. So the 2 small borders have been put on and it has been quilted. It's quilted with green thread with a very simple pattern, and it just is like a double C. The back was also quilted with a green thread. Now we need to put a simple binding on it and it's going to be done. From this to this, it was a very easy quilt to put together because the construction of the main block is very, very simple. It's a matter of squares and a couple of rectangles to put together. The blocks are made from 2.5 inch pieces, which are jelly rolls. So you could make this entire quilt using some jelly rolls. I'll put a link in the description to everything that I've used today for you. And as always, thank you for joining me today on Sew Very Easy. Feel free to subscribe, and as always, come on back. Let's see what we're sewing next time in the sewing room. Bye for now.